Hello everyone and welcome back to Python lessons on Codecademy. Today we'll be starting a new project, and this project is hopefully going to be using lists and dictionaries. The project is called A Day at the Supermarket. So let's start. Before we begin our exercise, we should go over Python for loop one more time. For now, we are only going to uh, go over the for loop in terms of how it relates to lists and dictionaries. We'll explain more cool for loop uses in later courses. For loops allow us to iterate through all the elements of a list easily, as we used it in the video before the last one, so check that out. I think that's video lesson 19. So this loop will run all of the code in the indented block, so this for x in a statement. The item in the list that is currently being evaluated will be x because you're saying for x. So running the following for item in 1, 3, 29 would print 1, then 3, then 21. The variable, and all of those will be on a separate line. So 1 will be there, 2 will be there, and 1 there, 3 there, and 29 on a new line. So the variable name for and in can be set to any variable name, currently item, but you should be careful to avoid using the word list as a variable, since that's a reserved word that means something special in the Python language. So what this task requires us to do is use a for loop to print out all of the elements in the list names. So for element in names, print element. So instead of element you can use a, but I decided to use element because I think it's just easier to understand what it means, and it's easier for late when you come back to a code to understand what you've written. So let's see what this does. So it prints each name on a separate line. So let's move on. You can also use for loop on a dictionary to loop through its keys with the following. So you can do the same for a dictionary. How you can do this is for element in Webster, print element. So it's not going to print the key, but it is going to print the value of the key, I believe. So for key in D. So what this should do is what this code is going to do, I know, is print the value of aardvark, which is a star of a popular children's cartoon show. But if you want to print the key of that value, you have to do dictionary and the index or the key, and do it in that format. So use a for loop to go through the Webster dictionary and print out all of the definitions. So this is so it is the other way around. Okay, so you need to do it Webster and element. So what this, yes. Okay, sorry about earlier on. So what this does, and if you do print element, is it prints the key. It doesn't print the value. So it's opposite of a list, but to print the value you have to do Webster square brackets element. Well, it's more appropriate to call that key in this case, because it is the key that you're using. So let's move on. Control flow and looping. The blocks of code in a for loop can be as big or as small as they need to be. While looping, you may want to perform different actions depending on the particular item in the list. So you might want to, if a number is 10, square it. If it's square number, to square root it, or do different things to it. But you don't want that to be done on all of the numbers. So let's see what this task wants us to do. Like step 2 above, loop through each item in the list called A. So for n in A. Like step 3 above, if the number is even, print it out. You can test if the item %2 equals 0 to help you out. So if the number is even, so if n modulo 2 equals 0, print n. So it prints all of the even numbers, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. That's all of the even numbers from that list. So let's move on. Functions can also take lists as inputs and perform various operations on those lists. With functions in C++, I know it's a bit more complicated to use lists because functions just make a copy of that list, and it's a bit more difficult to return the list, and it might be a bit inefficient, but I don't exactly know how Python functions with that. So let's see what this task requires us to do. Write a function called physCount, so def physCount, that takes a list x as input. Create a variable count to hold the ongoing count. Initialize it to 0, so count equals 0. For each item, so for item in x, if that item equals to the string phys, then increment the count variable, which means increase. So count plus equals 1, which is the same as count equals count plus 1, as I've explained in a few other videos as well. After the loop, please return the count variable. So return count. For example, physCount, physCat, and phys should return 2. If n equals phys. Sorry about that. Return 0 instead of the correct answer 1. So for item in x, if n equals phys, count plus equals 1. So what have we done incorrectly here? So for item in x, it goes phys. I think it wants to do a different type of string, or maybe not. Okay. Let's see the hint if there is one. So try making a counter variable, for example count, in your function. The counter variable could initially be set to 0. After that you can loop through the list that you take as input and increase count by 1 every time an item is in the list is equal to the string phys. At the end, don't forget to return the number of physes. So count equals 0. I don't understand this. Return 0 instead of the correct answer 1. So what am I doing wrong? We test it on here. Well, we haven't called it right. Phys count, and with a string of, I don't know, let's put 3 physes. So phys, phys, and phys. Does it give any? So global name n. Oh, that needs to be item, not n. There we go. That's where I went wrong. Okay, sorry about that, but I am learning as I go. So let's move on. as we've mentioned, strings are like lists with characters as elements. You can loop through strings the same way you loop through lists. While we won't ask you to do that in this section, we've put an example in the editor, blah blah blah. So run the code to see string iteration in action. So okay, let's look through the code first. For letter in codecademy, print letter. So what this should do is print each letter of codecademy on a separate line. Then it's going to print two blank lines, or actually one blank line, because it's going to not leave a space after that, or maybe it is, I don't remember. Then it assigns word to be programming is fun, and for each letter in that word, or for each character, would be more appropriate to put, because space would count as a letter in this case. If letter equals I, it's going to print letter. So it's going to print I twice on a different line. So it should print codecademy, then leave two spaces, and then print I. Yes, which is what happens. So thank you for watching and subscribing and commenting and liking on this video. In the next video we'll be continuing on with this project by going on to the section owning a store. So until then, bye.